Hi. So the other day I did a video about the soul and the ego and the difference between the two, and I got all those diagrams given to me by my guides to try and get you to see and understand it a bit more of the difference between the two in the body. And then last night I was thinking, well, now that you've watched that video and you've have more of an understanding on the difference between the ego self and the soul, there's probably more questions that you're starting to delve into. Like, this was one question I remember years and years ago. I asked somebody, so if my grandfather was, so I was alive, my grandfather was alive, we engaged, and then he passed away. And then if he chose to come back into, be born again, how do I then connect with my grandfather? That was a question that I was like, if he was living now in another soul, as a soul in another body, how could I connect to my grandfather as he was? And this person that I was talking to said, well, that's a really good question. And they couldn't really give me an answer. So that's something I worked on a long, long time ago with my guides. Like, can you explain that to me? So I'm going to use diagrams again. And so we've got reincarnation. And so say this is the soul of my grandfather, who was called Fred. And that soul contained all the information, just like a computer program sort of thing. It contained all the information of when he was alive, what he looked like, what he did, what personality he created, what life lessons he had to learn. Everything is stored in that. Like, it's like a knowledge cell. And then when that soul decides it's going to be born again, let's say it decides to come back again in another life, and this time it's a child that's called William. So the soul has come back and it's going to be another male. You can still access that life. That life it's like it's an imprint. There is an energetic imprint of that life. So even though it's it's like, to me, it's like when cells can break away. You have a cell, and a cell can break and then form into another cell, but they can still be connected. There's a memory on the new cell that's just formed. There's still memory from the old cell, and that kind of feels like what this energy is. Even though this soul has created into a new life, it retains the energy and the memory of a previous life. So it's not like that entire person is then born into this person. It's like, I know a lot of people say, oh, I think, my brother died and then they had a child years later and they think their brother has come in to the soul because there's so many similarities between them. It may be that that person has come in and come back again, but they're not the same person. It's not the same personality, and it's not the same. It's just that bit of soul energy. There's some soul energy from that life that's come into a new life, and you can still access this one. And then, yeah, so I hope that makes sense. So with my own, I did a past life regression, which I've talked about before. How can, if I'm living now in 2021, how do I recall all my past lives? Because I've left an imprinted impression of those lives, and my soul, my inner being now can connect back to it. So if I was a male in 1964, that life has an imprint of what that life was. It holds all the information about when I was born, when I died, what my life was like, what I had to learn in that life. And then from that, my soul decides to break away from that and then come into a new life. And then I may have been born as a boy in 1740. Now, when we're actually born, we we forget, like our ego selves forget about this previous life. But our higher self absolutely knows it. Our higher self retains all that information. So in a hypnosis session, when I went back through all these past lives, I can recall, or I know exactly what I felt at the time of being alive then, what I looked like, what I was learning, what I was experiencing. My higher consciousness has all that information, but my ego self doesn't. It doesn't have, because my ego self is only here for this physical life. My ego self is not connected back to what 1634 and 1740. My ego self is only here from 1962 when I was born to whenever I leave. But my higher self has the information, all the information about this life and all the information about all the previous lives. I hope that makes sense to you. So another thing that came up was, what about twin souls? You know, when you twin flames, twin souls, when you meet somebody and you just know there is such a strong, it's a twin soul like a twin flame is different to a soulmate. And I'll show you what happens. So if you've got a consciousness that lived in a certain time frame, and that consciousness splits, and it splits in two, where one part of the consciousness is going to go through a certain experience and the other one's going to go through a different experience. And then in a lifetime, when these two find each other, when you meet a twin flame, it's like you're coming back to yourself. It's like you're looking at somebody who's is there. You feel like they are you, but they're the opposite of you, but they feel like they're you. And twin flames is where we get the most valuable lessons, because let's say one twin flame decided to this twin flame was going to be born into a male's body and be born into a family that was going to provide them with everything. So they're born into a wealthy family, they're born with a lot of opportunity, and everything's given to them. They haven't had to work very hard for anything in life, it's all given to them. And their twin has gone into a female's body, and her experience in life is has come from a poorer family, or someone, people that struggle, a family where they always have to work for what they want. And then this one here has really learnt so much about appreciation of creating a life that they want, whereas this one here has not had the creativity because it's always just been given to them. So when they come together, they can actually come together and want to form a relationship because they feel very, very connected to one another. And what they can do here is, on an energetic level, like on your consciousness level, share with each other what each other's learned. So this one can then learn from that one about how to be more creative and do things for themselves rather than just have it given to them. And this one, who's always had to struggle and do things for themselves, can learn from the other one how to accept being given things. Can you see how it works? That's why you get, when you meet some people, it's like it's fiery, like a twin soul and a twin flame. When they come together, it's fiery and it's very, very passionate, and it's very, like, there's an inner knowing that you just know that you really know that person on a soul level. It's got nothing to do with their personality or ego. You know them much, much deeper. It goes really, really deep, because you were part of that. You and them were part of the same energetic soul, and it's split. Just like when twins are being born, or multiple babies, their cells can split into two, and they are two individuals, but together they feel that bond. It's the same thing with soul energy. A soul, an energetic ball of light, can split and go in two different ways, and when they come back together, it's like their reunion with themselves. but they've lived different lives. There's always major lessons to learn when you're with a twin flame. And quite often twin flame relationships don't last for a long time, because when they come back together, they share what they've learned, and then they go again. They go again in their own directions. But sometimes they do work. It just depends on each circumstance. And then a soulmate. A soulmate is more of not having that feeling that I can learn from somebody else. So you're actually always exchanging thoughts through the ego, and you're always exchanging energy through your higher selves. There's just this knowing that I want to journey with this person because we're going to help each other to grow, and we're going to experience life together. And it's more of a sharing, like soul connection that you have, rather than with the twin flames. It's more of a giving taking thing. This is more of a sharing, where you feel like you're on an even basis with this soul, and you just know you feel drawn to them and they feel drawn to you. When it's a soul connection, it's not one-sided. It's both of you feel it. So yeah, you know what I mean when you feel that soul connection to somebody, and you just know there's going to be value. You know that if I travel down the path with this person for a short time, for a long time, there's going to be something from them I can give to them, they can give to me, that's got value in it. As anything to do with the soulmate connection holds value for both people. Seeing somebody else and just being kind to them and not really wanting to get closer to them, you'll just know that there's not value in that. It's just more like an acquaintance. So that's the difference between a soulmate, and soulmates last longer. Soulmate relationships can last, like eternity. And then, so if you've had soul connections with people, once you've passed over, the consciousness can decide, let's go and have another journey together in another lifetime. And so if there was relationships like this person was alive and they had to go off to war. So if these two were in a relationship, they were bonded, they were soulmates. And if this person left, they deserted this other person and they were killed during a wartime. They never got to really have a long soul relationship together. And then this person was left feeling abandonment. So they can have a contract where they will come back into one another's lives, and rather than abandoning each other and not getting the experience, they become very, very codependent on each other in the next life, because there's that feeling, that deep knowing that you've got. And when you tap into it, it's like, I was abandoned in a past life, so in this lifetime, that person, we're going to stay together, like nothing is going to split us up. And we're going to experience what it is to be really, really close to one another, because in a previous life we experienced being separated through war. So that's where the contract comes in. Like, these two souls are going to come find each other and finish the journey that they tried to start in a previous life. And I found that exact experience when I did my own past life regression, because when I went back to, I think it was like 1886, I went back to being a female, and I could see I was kind of like about 18 years of age, and I had this really big, lovely big gown on, like dress, and I was on a balcony, and I had fallen to my death off the balcony. That's how I died, and I was only young. I was only like 18 or 19, 20, around that age, and I had died. And I knew, as I was going back through this past life, I knew there was a male there, who we were like interested in each other. We wanted to form a relationship together. We wanted to fall in love. But I died before we got to experience life together, before we got to get any value from one another as soulmates. We didn't get that chance because I had an accident and died and fell off the balcony. And then this soul, which is me, returned and was born in 1962. And this same soul from this time was born again, returned, and was born into a male's body in 1958. And then in 1980, they met. And then they formed a relationship and they got married. And they stayed married for 30 years. And then that contract was over. They got to have the experience that they need. These two souls had agreed way back then that never got the chance to do. They got to do it again later in another lifetime. And it doesn't just have to be with love relationships. It can be with all kinds of relationships. If there was a father and a daughter relationship that was extremely toxic in one life, it can come back. Souls can make a contract to come back and resolve those issues that they didn't resolve in a previous life. And you can find that you feel like you're contracted to some souls. You'll just stay there. Even sometimes you'll think, why am I even still in this relationship? But you just feel like I've got to stay here. I'm not finished with it yet. There's more to do. And quite often you get that feeling where if something feels to be parting, like relationships feel to be parting, one of you might feel like, but it's not over yet. There's still something there. There's still something that has to be experienced. And so if that other person chooses to walk away and you don't get to experience it, it'll come back around again. If it's not in this life, it'll be in another life where those two souls find each other again and get to go through that experience. So it's kind of like you can avoid it, but it always seems to come back around until you get to have that experience that those souls wanted. And then when we have difficulties in life, the soul starts saying things like, well, the ego starts thinking, I don't like this. It's not fair. Why me? And goes into like a victimhood type feeling. That's usually the ego. And you can go one of two ways. You've got a problem in your life, you've got one of two ways you can go through. You can listen to the ego and start saying, this is not fair. Why is it happening to me? I'm a nice person. Why do bad people get away with stuff and I'm a good person and I've got bad things happening to me? We all do that. We all do that self-talk with ourselves, sorry. And yet the soul inside is saying things like, what is this showing me? Is this helping my growth? Is this for my benefit? So the soul is looking at it more like, what is this showing me at the moment? Remember I wrote that thing about contrast the other day? And it's like when everything's going wrong, the first thing we kind of do is drop the bundle and then say, oh, why is this happening? I don't want this to happen. Of course you don't want this to happen, because when it's happening, it's not a nice feeling, and none of us like to have that horrible feeling. But how do we can't just be happy all the time, because when you are faced with challenges, that's when you get creative. When everything's just cruising along, you don't get creative. You kind of go stagnant. When everything is going along really, really well and everyone's happy, you just get up each day, you do the same thing over and over and over. You don't really put a lot of effort into changing something. But the minute, the tower moment happens where everything starts crumbling around you and you either have your health issues, everything, suddenly something happens with your health. your job's gone, the money's gone, relationships are gone, whatever it is that suddenly happens, it throws you into coming up with creative ideas and getting deeper into knowing who you are. Because you wouldn't do that. If you were in your little comfort zone, you don't normally get into knowing who you are on a deeper level. It's only when you get thrown challenges that you start coming up with ideas to be different, looking at yourself, looking at what is teaching you. So we don't see them as blessings though, do we? When difficulties come, we don't go, oh, this is teaching me how to be more confident. Oh, this is teaching me that I've been doing something that's not serving me a purpose. This is teaching me to step out of my comfort zone. This is teaching me to be brave. This is teaching me to let go of fear. Like, we don't normally go to all those places of saying, what is it teaching me? And what's it giving my soul as an experience? We go straight to the, I don't like this, I don't like what's happening. But how long do you sit there saying, I don't like what's happening, before you start thinking, okay, I've got to do something about changing this? If it was your health and you hadn't been looking after your health, and then suddenly something happens detrimental that nearly kills you, do you then start looking after your health? Or if you've lost your job, are you then meant to be being more creative to create your own job? There's, like when something happens and it feels bad, it's what triggers you. It's the triggering point to get you to do something different, to get you to go in a different direction. Otherwise, you wouldn't. Otherwise, you'd just be sitting happily in the comfort zone and you'd start to get stagnant. So there's a reason why things happen. And even if we don't like them, there is a reason why they happen. I often equate that to with prayer, like people that like to pray to God and pray, when they get up and their life is really, really good and everything's going great, how many people actually sit there and just say thank you to God, thank you to Source, thank you to guides, thank you to relatives that have passed, just thank you, because today's a really, really good day. Not very many people think to do that until the world comes crashing down around them and they're faced with an illness, or they're faced with loss of money or loss of job or loss of relationships. And then all of a sudden they start praying to God. Now I need help. When everything was going really good and you were helping behind the scenes, I didn't think to thank you. But now everything's turned to shit. Oh, now I need to ask for God's help, and I need to pray, and I need to get, like, why do we do that? Why do we find it really, really hard to just appreciate when it's all going great, and we only ask for help when it's going wrong? Human nature, I guess, and it's from just living in that state of thinking more from the ego and not feeling blessed from the higher self, that absolutely everything is to teach you something. Everything is bringing some kind of value to you, even if you can't see it. So, yeah, that was a few other things that came through, just to try. Yeah, I thought you maybe got more questions around what I'd shown you the other day, and it started making you think on a deeper level. And hopefully I've just helped with a few more answers. So, yes, and I did. I got to see the show the other night on Channel 9, which was called The 100 by Andy Lee, and unfortunately the show's not getting that great feedback from people. I think it may have to do with the type of questions that they're asking, because my part about answering about UFOs and another participant answered a question about seeing ghosts, and that was cut out of the show. So maybe if they started to ask, I know it's a comedy show and they were trying to keep everything lighthearted and funny, but my thought is maybe people in the world are a little bit sick of the fluffiness of television, and we are more intelligent to be wanting very in-depth conversations and interesting conversations. And maybe if they got rid of the comedy panel that they have there and just focused on the 100, like asking people in Australia, what are you really about? What do you think? What's your life like? Don't you find it more interesting knowing more about people and how they think and how they live? Yeah, so anyway, they'll work it out in their own time. So thanks again for listening to me, and I'll talk to you soon.